You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Ben Smith climbs. Oh, he's taken it, Ben Smith. What a take. They need to get there in numbers, the All Blacks. Aaron Smith with a stutter step. Wide. Retallick to Sevilla. Sevilla down the left wing. Gets rid of Nakatasi. That's Jonah Lomu. That's Lomu West down the left wing. Try Julian Sevilla. All Blacks still looking keen. Carter in the front lines. Here it comes. They kick it out. The French have had enough. Game is over. The rout is complete. New Zealand 62. France 13.
One of the all-time great Rugby World Cup performances by the All Blacks 8 years ago on Tuesday. A quarter-final against France in Cardiff. 9 tries, including a hat-trick to Julian Savia. 7 of those converted by Dan Carter, who also kicked a penalty. 62-13. The All Blacks beat France that day. 2-time World Cup winner, 33-test All Blacks loose forward Victor Vito played in that game and in the 2015 Rugby World Cup final, which, as it turned out, was his last test for the All Blacks. He's in France doing some work around this Rugby World Cup, and Victor Vito is with us. Thanks for joining us, Victor. Before we even start looking at the game, as a former All Black and now, I guess, as an All Blacks fan, how are the emotions going ahead of this quarterfinal, mate?
Oh man, the emotions are running high, mate. I think it's almost the perfect storm to be meeting Ireland at this time of the competition. Obviously, they gave us some hurt and gave us some pain when they came over and dealt to us in the Irish series, and I think if there's any way to rectify it is to win this game. So yeah, really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that point, Victor, about the battle scars, the mental scars, the motivation of wanting to redress things that have happened in the past. Richie Mwanga did some media this week where he talked about that very thing, about how there's some scarring from what happened here in New Zealand last year, and the motivation to put that right. Are those sorts of things used as motivation by players in a big way ahead of big games like this?
I don't think it's a bad thing to have that sort of, if that's what Ricky called it, as mental scars, because, at the end of the day, it was being knocked out in 2007 that motivated, Richie, Dan, the rest of the crew, all of them just to change their approach, change tack, and that's what led to 2011. So I think, if Richie's talking about that, that's a good thing, because quite often as an All Black, you're just worried about your standards and you only focus on your game. And it's not often you have motivation that's from disappointment to take into a game like this. So I think they've got it all right. I think they're obviously focusing on their systems, but there's still a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, and I think that could only be a good thing.
You've been involved in a few All Blacks World Cup weeks with knockout matches at the end. Does the intensity ramp up markedly in a week like this inside the All Blacks camp?
Oh yeah, I think straight away you just know, you always say that it's do or die every game, and even in pool phases you say it's do or die because every game's a final. But obviously the reality is this is the real stuff that you came for. These are the games that separate the men from the boys, so to speak. So we know, just in terms of the training intensity, everyone's on. Even guys that might have been disappointed about not starting or whatnot, all of that gets put aside, because the only thing that matters is what makes the boat go faster. And so all hands will be on deck. Trainings would have been absolutely intense, extra video reviews, extra meetings, all those sorts of things, just because the gravity of the game that's about to come.
Will the All Blacks be in any way disadvantaged by having had 3 relatively easy pool games before this quarterfinal?
I think it's always a matter of perspective. You can't, there's an uncontrollable, and that's the teams that you get dealt with, that you get given. But the controllable is obviously just that mental mindset of knowing that no matter who's in front of you and what games you had, maybe it was a bad thing, but you could probably look at it and say, well, now that we should be fresher than the other teams coming into this quarterfinal. So I think that's the approach that they're going to take, and you should have the class to be able to put that aside and know that we've got a big challenge in Ireland. You're
on the grass, obviously, in France, and actually on the grass, literally. I saw you spent some time with the team in the last couple of weeks, not only in camp with them, but actually out there training with them. How did you find that?
Mate, first of all, I was absolutely honoured to be invited back into the circle. So I've had Joe Schmidt just walk up to me and say, look, the boys are one short for the opposition. It'd be lovely if you could jump in there. And I think, that's a very sacred circle of men to be able to come back and be a part of. So to have been part of that was amazing. And just to bang some bodies again and realise that, I had my ribs open at one point and Brodie Retallick could have absolutely cleaned me up. But yeah, there's still a little bit of respect there. He knows I don't want to be going to these promos at the World Cup with a broken rib.
I bet. All right, let's look at this game. The big story, obviously, last 48 hours has been, as far as the All Blacks are concerned, Mark Talia being dropped from the All Blacks side for this one because of a breach of protocol. What did you make of the decision to leave him out?
I guess, first of all, I was disappointed for him. I mean, I'm not sure what the details are, but, you never want to be, he's been probably my form winger, the way he's been playing. And so it's just a letdown for the team. Yeah, but at the end of the day, the standards are the standards. And I know that whoever steps in was always going to be ready to step in, even if, if Mark wasn't on form or whatever the reason was. So, we're always ready. And I know that the guys that have stepped in will just be ready to do the job for him, just to make sure that it's got nothing to do with him. It's all about the team. And, if we can win and get another week, then maybe he can get another shot.
I see there have been suggestions, and you've probably heard these, that the fact that this has happened ahead of a very, very big game of rugby could speak to a wider problem within the All Blacks team culture. Do you think that's the case, or is this just simply a mistake by a human being?
Yeah, I'd say it's a mistake by a human being, mate. Look, in 2011, we had a couple of other human beings, in Corey James and Izzy Digg and all those guys, that broke obvious protocols. And I don't think anything that Mark's done is anywhere near as that bad. So, look, it's a pressure cooker. It's a real pressure cooker, and sometimes people do, out of things, out of character, just because there's a bit of a release, and obviously that release might have led to breaking protocols, and that's obviously understandable, the release part, but what is not understandable and I guess non-negotiable is our standards, and I'm sure he's holding himself to that as well.
Well, let's look at the game. Everything I read and hear, Victor, talks about the battle at the breakdown shaping as a crucial part of that game. Break that down for us. What is the best way to win the battle at the breakdown?
Obviously winning the race, getting there first, but I think in terms of the breakdown, it's all about the advantage line. It's all about the advantage line. So if we want to win the breakdown, we've got to be making them go backwards. We've got to be making them, as a defensive line, go backwards, trying to have to, poach the ball from going backwards. It's not easy. And conversely, on defense, it's a lot easier to pilfer the ball if you're just coming forward as a wave and making dominant tackles. If you're going backwards all day, it's going to be hard. So really, pilfering is just it's like a sort of flow-on effect from either from dominant carries or from dominant defence. What
else then? What else could be key for the All Blacks to beat Ireland? What else would they have to do particularly well to win this?
I think attacking wise, we've got all the guns at our disposal. We've got all our we've got a lot big artillery in terms of what we can do out wide, what we can do with our runners. It's actually going to be a test of our defence. I think we've probably been a little bit narrow in our defensive line of late, and I think if you do that against a team like Ireland, that they just love to, off the set pieces, a big wide pass from Jameson Gibson Park. They're trying to get around you straight away, and if you're hugging that line out too much or worrying about inside threats too much, like they've got the skills to go around you. And also, obviously, if you're too wide, they'll just pick a transition zone or something to come back in. So we've got to make sure that on defence we're not lazy, especially around the rucks, because they love to do those plays where they switch it out to the right. And then Johnny Sexton might cut back and give it to an inside runner on a winger or something coming down from the blind. So we've got to make sure our rock defenders, the guys that are right by the rucks, aren't just seeing the ball go the far side and stop running. They need to roll around and be aggressive in that role.
How do you think the Irish are feeling ahead of this? They've won 17 test matches in a row. They're the number one side in the world. They beat New Zealand down here in New Zealand last year. Every bookie around the world is installing them as favourites, but they have never been past the quarterfinals at a Rugby World Cup before. Any chance, Victor, that the occasion gets the better of Ireland?
Yeah, I think the start's going to be pretty important for us. I know the Irish, and especially the way Leinster like to play, they like to be all guns blazing for the first 40 minutes, if not the 50, 60 minutes. But I think if you've got the power in your pack to keep hammering the defensive line, and that scoreboard, if you're still within touch or you're taking it over by being in the lead, I think those doubts will come in, and I think the start's going to be pretty important. Either either we kick off with a great start and we keep them at bay and force the pressure on them, or you might just see them starting to try and pull away. But if you're constantly in the game with a kickable penalty and that kind of thing, the doubt will start creeping in if we're still in there with after 60 minutes.
And just looking 24 hours ahead, the last of the quarterfinals, of course, is the host nation, France, against South Africa on Sunday night over there, Monday morning for us. Another mouth-watering prospect, another heavyweight battle. How are French rugby fans feeling about their chances of progressing to the semi-final and staying in with a chance of winning the Rugby World Cup on home soil?
Yeah, I think in true French fashion, obviously they're very patriotic and are very hopeful, but they're also just very aware of the fact, like you say, the South Africans are, they're pretty humongous at the moment in terms of obviously the way they're playing their bench and just the way they're playing so physically. And they still talk about that Irish-South African game being probably one of the most brutal encounters I've seen in a long, long time. So, and they're not sure of their own team, but that's true French fashion, a little bit pessimistic, but very, very hopeful. So I think quietly they're confident, but they're not going to be putting the kitchen sink into it at all just yet.
All right. Well, it's the other quarterfinal, or the second of them, we're most interested in. It can't come around quickly enough. You're over there in France, obviously. You'll be at the game, presumably, Victor. Are you working in some capacity? Is it commentary work? You in a studio somewhere, or some hospitality? What's the story?
No, I'm not doing any commentary or anything. Actually, I'm actually just doing hosting at the matches. So before games, I'll be doing some work with NZR. But then after the games, during the games, I'll be with a French agency that have got 300 odd clients from all over the world that they're hosting. It's basically I'll be there with Philippe Bernard-Sall. They've got some other guys, other French legends, Francois Tronduc. These are all obviously French legends over here, but just because I can speak French, I've been able to get a gig with them and host their clients and watch the games.
Outstanding. Well, it's been great to get your expertise, find out a bit about what's happening on the ground over there, and help pass the time to kick off tomorrow morning, Victor. Thanks for taking the time, mate. Enjoy the game, whatever it is that happens. Thanks for taking our call.
Cheers, Piney. All good, mate.
Thanks, mate. That is Victor Vito.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.